This is nothing like the game.
Under the sea.
Insomniac Games have created my favorite franchise of all time, Ratchet & Clank, and 5 games in that series are some of my favorite games of all time. Now, outside of Ratchet & Clank, I haven't really played much of their other games. I tried Disruptor, which was weird. I've played a little of Resistance, Fuse, and Spyro 1, which were fun, but RNC I've played the absolute crap out of. Because of this, I will basically give anything of theirs a try. The Ratchet & Clank games are great, and what little I've played of their other games was good, aside from Disruptor, so I'm sure their games will always be good, or you know, at least fun. So when Song of the Deep was announced, I was immediately intrigued. It looked mysterious and beautiful, and the fact that GameStop was going to publish the game did intrigue me more, although I admittedly did not keep up with the game as it seemed like it was announced, little info was released, and then the game was out. So I picked up the game for PS4, and now I'm going to talk about it. The back of the box says, a captivating story set in a beautiful underwater environment. Engage in frenetic combat and solve complex puzzles, and I'm guessing that this girl is the main character. From this little info I have, I'm expecting a short but fun game with some good puzzles, so let's pop it in and see what it's all about. So I start a new game and we start being told about the main character, Merryn, by an Irish narrator.
Merryn loved the sea. She loved the sound of the waves calling to her through her window. She dreamt every night of the mysteries that lay beneath.
Merryn is a young girl of unknown age, though if I had to guess I'd say she's about 10 to 12, I guess, who lives with her father who is a fisherman. Every day he would go out to sea, and every night he would come back, where Merryn would hold up a candle to help him guide his way. They were a poor family, but a happy one. Every night Merryn's father would sing her songs about adventures, monsters, lost cities, etc. This is the life of Merryn, but one night her father did not come back. Fearing that her father was in trouble, she decided to build a goddamn submarine and find him. A submarine, mind you, that can survive deep waters, violent sea creatures, and she later upgraded to shoot torpedoes and grab stuff. How does she not have a job exactly? After a loading screen that lasts 47 seconds, so unless you play this game in large chunks like I did, you'll have to wait for the game to load a lot, we enter actual gameplay. We pilot Merryn's submarine, and at the moment we can only move. The movement is a little wonky at times as you are underwater, so you can accidentally drift into obstacles, or it could take a little too long to turn around and you'll take damage, but overall I'd say the controls are fine. We also learn about the currency in the game, which is various treasures like old coins. This makes Merryn very happy whenever we collect these. Eventually we get a magnetic claw that allows us to grab things so we can progress. We also learn about the checkpoints of the game, which are these little wells of an energy called time, which refill your health and energy. And that's T-Y-N-E, by the way. When I played this, it sounded like the narrator said time, so you may want to listen closely. Speaking of the narrator, she is the only voice we hear in the entire game, and in this beginning section, she feels the need to talk about everything.
The world beneath the waves shimmered with mystery. Merryn spotted some odd-looking old coins. An eerie light flickered and danced on the sea floor. A seahorse made of clockwork gears darted out of the way as Merryn approached. Merryn approached a glowing scrap of metal and pulled it inside. She wondered who could have built such a curious creature. Glow-kelp bulbs lit up around her as she passed by. It was claw-shaped. Maybe her father would know where they were from and had a strong magnetic pull.
I swear to God, she'd narrate Merryn's entire life if we saw it. Merryn went into the kitchen to get some cereal. She could not decide between Lucky Charms or Frosted Flakes. She loved the marshmallows that were inside Lucky Charms, but she knew that Frosted Flakes were part of a great balanced breakfast. She thought about it for a while, and decided to eat neither, and instead got some Captain Crunch, as it was her favourite. As we continue on, we get to the first boss fight, I guess is what we'll call it. This mechanical guardian is blocking our path, so we have to throw mines at it until it explodes to death. With the underwater controls, it makes this a bit awkward. Afterwards, the narrator mentioned something called the foray. We put some statue heads back in place, meet a hermit crab who is the merchant in the game, get a boost and searchlight upgrade, and follow a mermaid, Marrow Maiden, named Kara, who points us to Skeleton Reef. Also, I gotta say the face Merryn makes when you have low health is priceless. So far, I have to say the game is pretty boring. I mean, the game is very pretty and the art style is great, even if the 3D model of the sub is distracting next to the 2D environments, but the actual gameplay is boring. So far there haven't been any puzzles, unless you count looking for and moving statue heads as puzzles, and the combat is just use your claw to fight the enemies. It gets tedious fast and the enemies always come in swarms that use you as a pinball, which is annoying. And then you get to the parts with the mines that you have to move, and Christ out of toll booth does this suck. So you have to drag the mines to where you want them so they can blow up stuff in your path. ignoring the fact that your position must be very precise to grab the mines will explode on contact. On contact with what? Everything! The moment anything from yourself to a wall touches the mine, it explodes. So you have to be very careful with where you move it, and the explosion radius is so small that if you are a millimeter off, it will not work. Imagine you have an object on a string, and attached to that string is a ball. Now, imagine that you are told to get it through this small opening. Now, you are not allowed to move the ball itself, you may only use the string to move the ball. You may find this easy, or you may not, but now imagine that every time you touch anything, including the object in which the ball is attached to, the ball would suddenly fly away and you had to go and grab it and try it again. This is how this part with the mines is. And back to the explosion thing, let's compare this to a bat and a ball. Say the ball is the obstacle in your way, and the bat is the bomb. If you hit the ball with the bat, you'll be fine. But if you miss the ball, even if you are very close to hitting it, if you do not hit it dead on, it will not work. Then, immediately after, you are put into a section where there are a ton of these mines that you have to avoid, except the explosion is much larger. Why couldn't these mines have those too? And the weirdest part is that these mines, at least the ones that you have to navigate with the chain, are only used in this section and then are never used again. So what was the point of making me use these annoying things, you motherfucker? Suddenly, we find a foray sentinel. They destroy anything that isn't foray, meaning us, meaning mini-boss. We go to Watcher's Hollow where we face a giant spot. Nope. Fuck that. Merryn sees a cocoon moving about and thinks it could be her father. This is the first actual boss fight in the game, and by boss fight I mean you distract it for a minute and pull the webs off of this boat, which collapses and drags the Watcher with it. We break open the cocoon and discover that it isn't Merryn's father, but instead it's a Leviathan, and considering my knowledge of Leviathans, I'm gonna keep a close eye on you. I don't care if Merryn names you Swish or if you give me a torpedo upgrade. I don't trust you. We follow Swish to some ruins where Kara is supposed to be, but the sub is too large to fit, so we go around putting more heads on statues until we find a scuba suit and a seashell that allows Merryn to breathe underwater, so now we are able to leave the sub and explore areas that we couldn't get to before. And you are able to return to the sub at any time by holding L1, which I think is a great thing to include. We use this new ability to get to Kara, who is weaker than before. She tells us to get to a place called the Deep Light, which will apparently help Merryn find her father. To activate the Deep Light, we must find 3 resonance orbs, which are scattered around the ocean. This part is kind of tedious as you have to backtrack to places you've already been to, but the map makes it a whole lot easier. Speaking of, this map is great. It tells you where you are, where your sub is if you are away from it, gates, treasures, health and tine upgrades, shops, tine wells and tine vortexes, as well as your goals, which are these large glowing yellow X's, and they have arrows to help you know which direction you need to head to. You also can zoom in and out and quickly snap to your location or your goal locations, which is extremely helpful. It is kind of annoying that you have to keep opening up, and I feel that a mini-map would have helped, but I can't deny that this map is super useful, especially in comparison to the last one I used. Also, when we get the resonance orbs, Merryn,
or rather the narrator,
says that she feels uneasy, so I'm calling it now. Kara is evil and is using this deep light to take over. Also, calling that this game is a dream since the game says Merryn dreamed that her father was in trouble and we never saw her wake. Game is a dream, Kara is evil, I'm calling it now and I'll be expecting my ghost was right. Check in the mail, Mr. Price. So here's the weird thing about this game. It gets better. Now you may be wondering why that's weird, but usually when a game starts out boring, or a person begins a game and finds it boring, that experience will not change. That's how my experience is anyways. But here, after we collect the resonance orbs and get a magma missile upgrade, the game becomes less boring and more fun. Yeah, there are still some annoying and boring parts, but overall the game becomes better. First off, the narrator's dialogue becomes less frequent, only really being used for major story stuff. But the point I could tell the game got better was when we got to the Deep Light, because it has actual puzzles. Earlier, Merryn collected this blade that you can use to reflect light, which is used great here. The puzzles are actual puzzles, and one of them even had me stumped for a bit. You have to guide the lights to these color spots that will open the gates, allowing the large beam of light to pass through, which will activate the Deep Light. Parts make you mix light colors, one part makes you aim light into these nodes to turn the mirrors, one part gives you 2 sets of colored lights and you end up having to use a light from one to solve the other side. Holy crap, these are really good puzzles! Then we get a sonar upgrade that lets us find secrets and go into certain areas. The main path leads us to this foray weapon storing place that has an annoying combat part, but then it introduces a new mechanic, bombs that will activate from light or sonar. This makes you have to plan how you're going to move them. Then we get a section where you have to use sonar to navigate this area filled with thick black smoke. Then we get an ice missile upgrade that will make whatever it hits float upwards. Then there's a part where all three are mixed, plus now you have to use sonar to precisely detonate the bomb so they'll hit the switch. I absolutely love this! I wish that the whole game was like this. I feel it would have been a lot better if it focused more on these types of puzzles. Sadly it doesn't, but hey, better to have them late than not at all, I guess. Continuing onwards past this stupidly hard gears section, we find Merryn's father's boat, but then we are abducted by a giant structure called the Architect before we can investigate. Here there are lasers that can be deactivated by hitting the robo-turtle that has the corresponding color, and eventually the place starts shifting around. This is another great section, and we also get an upgrade to our sonar that allows us to break glass. Neato! Now we can investigate the boat and find Merryn's father's journal, but then giant tentacles attack. Okay, no. We're stopping this here because I've been on the internet long enough to see where this is headed, and I don't want the cops to get involved. The tentacled beast that attacks us basically makes the sub a large paperweight, so Merryn decides to look in her father's journal where he left a note for her. She cries, but then is saved by Swish, who brings us to the Sea Garden where our sub has been fixed by the merchant. Basically, the beast destroying the sub was pointless. We learn that Kara is dying, and her wish is to fix the mechanical seahorse that was destroyed earlier. The pieces are scattered across the map, but really this section isn't terrible, just kinda boring trying to find a way to get to the pieces. But hey, there's this legitimately tense section where you have to outrun these one-hit kill enemies that is super satisfying to get out of. We fixed the seahorse despite Merryn saying she couldn't fix it earlier.
In the hollow of a sunken ship lay the remains of a clockwork seahorse. Although Merryn could not fix it, she would do her best to carry on its noble purpose. Although Merryn could not fix it.
Who leads us to the home of a sea dragon who tells us about the tentacle monster that attacked us earlier, which is called the Rimorosa. The foray controlled this beast, but eventually it rebelled and attacked the foray, wiping them out. Naturally, Merryn wants to fight this beast herself. Merryn, I get that your dad could be there, and it's super sweet that you are willing to die trying to save him, but there's also this thing called concern for your own well-being. I'm sure your dad would be totally fine if you didn't go and save him from a giant, deadly tentacle monster. Oh, don't look at me like that. Stop it. Stop it. Okay, fine, I won't stop you, but you're going alone. Okay, fine, I'll come with you. We go back into the ancient city where we were before, navigate a bullshit laser maze, and we finally find Merryn's father. Holy fuck, what is that? Kill with fire! Kill it with all the fire! This being of hell is the Rimorosa, who is the final boss. And by final boss, I mean we kill 1,000 more enemies and rip off the thing keeping the Rimorosa here. This frees the beast, the city crumbles apart, Merryn and her father reunite, and Swish's mommy saves them before returning back to the shore where the two buy a new boat. Since Merryn has proven herself to be a badass, she now tags along with her father on his trips. Okay, that's sweet and all, but is nobody going to mention the giant monster we just unleashed upon the sea? Zaid? Marcus? Kevin? Justin Moshkevich? No one? Oh, okay. And that was Song of the Deep. Do I recommend it? I don't know. With the other games I've talked about, it's pretty clear, but this game is a real mixed bag. There are a lot of boring and tedious parts, but there are some good puzzles. The combat is dull, but the story is good. The game is beautiful, but the soundtrack is forgettable. The characters are fine, but besides Merryn, we don't get to know them all that well since the narrator is the only person we hear throughout the game. There are so many things that conflict with each other that I don't know if I'd recommend it. Let me put it like this. If you are a fan of Insomniac, you'll probably like it. If you are willing to put up with a mostly boring first third to get to the good stuff, you'll probably like it. But if you aren't the former and or aren't willing to do the latter, then it's probably not your thing. But hey, the game is only $15, so if you don't like it, then it isn't a huge loss. Also, I'd like to point out that I beat the game in around 7 hours, and honestly, 7 hours for a $15 game is much longer than I expected. Okay, sure, a lot of it was probably me just trying to get to the next location, but I expected a 2 to 3 hour game, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. Also, I guess my calls were wrong. You win this time, Insomniac. But you also made the Ratchet Clank games, so I guess you win 11 more times. Anyway, see you later, peoples and non-peoples of the internet. I'm Ghost Ion, and don't forget to stay hydrated. Not with salt water, though, they'll kill ya. Roll the outro! How you guys digging that trench coat? I think it's snazzy.